Welcome in, Hawks fans. Your boy Rasul is back at it again for another Believe in Hawks episode. The All-Star break has come and gone, and now the Hawks will resume play Thursday against the Orlando Magic as the official playoff push begins for our Atlanta Hawks. The team getting back to practice today. Speaking after practice, a couple comments to note when I get later into the pod about that. Obviously, this next 4 games is a very huge stretch for this team as they're trying to make a push, as I say, for the 6th seed. The race to the 6th seed for the Atlanta Hawks to get out of the play-in and be firmly in the postseason. So I appreciate you guys tuning in for another Believe in Hawks episode. We're going to talk about that, talk about just expectations for us the season, and I'll mention some Trae Young conversation as well, and then maybe some thoughts on the All-Star weekend that has passed, just because I know that was obviously a big topic of discussion when it was going on and in the format and things of that nature. So that's what we got in store on tonight's Believe in Hawks podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment down below about anything that we discuss here on the pod. Audio listeners, leave a rating, review, tell your friends about Believe in Hawks for sure. Obviously, if you're driving to work, at lunch, cooking, whatever, Believe in Hawks is here for you if you want to hear about your Atlanta Hawks as we try to continue to grow the pod in the community of amazing Atlanta sports content creators. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. Hawks starting practice today, Wednesday, and get guys back. First development, Quinn Snyder confirms that Clint Capella will be available tomorrow. Obviously, that was something that was to be expected. The Hawks did not play Clint Capella as they led up to the trade deadline in anticipation that he could get traded. He did not get traded, so he stayed on the roster. Some people wondered after Larry Nance went down, would he have came back in the next game? It didn't happen. Quinn mentioned ramping up Clint Capella, working on his conditioning, and now he'll be a part of the team's plans. That'll be their source of size coming off the bench for this team. That's the biggest player they have outside of like a Mohamed Gay, but in terms of just a more filled out NBA player with size, Clint Capella is their best guy for that spot. He'll obviously back up Onyeka Okongwu. Larry Nance may be out for the rest of the year, some people say. There's been some hinting that could be the case. Don't obviously know if that's true. Like I said, he'll be reevaluated in about 4 to 5 weeks now. So we'll now put them right at the end of March-ish, and then we'll see where he is as they go into that last month of April. Maybe he can come back and play some basketball for the team, and we'll see if that changes anything from a rotation perspective. But overall, one thing I've said about them practicing, I think this is great for the new guys, Niang, LeVert, Mann, just because they haven't had the ability to really be able to practice at all. They've been basically playing with no practice. All they have is walkthroughs and film study. Luckily, they're veterans and guys who know how to play the game so they can fit in and play. Because at the end of the day, basketball is basketball. It's just maybe more of the more strategic things, running certain plays. That's where you don't get the ability to really execute them to the fullest extent because you don't have the ability to practice them. So I'm sure the Hawks were able to try to, do some things with that in practice and try to help the new guys kind of get more accustomed to that as well. Trae Young and actually was talking to Terrence Mann on a podcast, mentioning about, the trading of Bogey, saying, Bogey was his closest teammate, closest friend on the team, one of the closest friends on the team. And obviously he said, if you're going to trade Bogey, obviously bring in someone who can obviously produce. And he said someone who was annoying, et cetera, was a word he used. And Terrence Mann is a guy who fit that description. Obviously, Terrence Mann, since he has years in his contract and the Hawks traded with him, the perception is that Terrence Mann will be a part of this roster moving forward. And he will be a guy that they want to bring in as part of what they're trying to build in Atlanta for sure. So, as I mentioned, with all of that, injury report came out today, pretty much what you expect. Krejci out, Nance out, Trae probable. You'll have your people ready for Orlando tomorrow. And going into that Orlando game, and even the further games beyond, the Hawks are now in a position where this is where I've said the official playoff push begins. Trae Young also mentioned in that interview when he was talking with Mann and stuff that that they're trying to win. They're trying to make the postseason. They're trying to not be a play-in team. And so that clearly established the expectations. I've said that I feel like this, since the trade deadline, since Landry Fields had spoke, this is the first time I think in a few years where the Hawks are talking more aggressively like, oh, we're trying to win ball games. We're trying to be a postseason team. You really didn't hear that a lot with the Hawks in the last couple of years. It kind of felt like it was more of like we're just wanting guys to get better and see where things go. This is the first year, Trey obviously has been talking about winning. But, like I said, Fields kind of talking about that as well, talking about we have games to win. That clearly tells you, what the mindset is. They're clearly trying to go out there and compete. I pulled up the exact quote that Trae Young mentioned from the Point Podcast, his podcast. And he mentioned on Atlanta's end of season goals, and I quote, "Nowhere below the playoffs. That's got to be our focus. When we made these moves, we got guys from the Cavs. Then we bring in Terrence Mann. You've got winners around you. So it's like you've got to win. You've got to be in the playoffs. So that's our main focus." Just to further elaborate on that. And so, I think this is going to be a very interesting end to the year for this team. They're obviously competing for something. The Atlanta Hawks will be playing one more game than the end of the regular season. We just don't know if it's going to be a game one in a playoff series against the Knicks, because I feel like they get the 6th, there's going to be the Knicks. Is it going to be a play-in game where you are 7th, 8th seed and you just got to win one game? Is it going to be 9 or 10 where you have to win 2 games just to get the 8th seed? That's going to be the big question for this team. And they have a big 4-game stretch coming up, right? You play Orlando, a team where they've dealt with a lot of injuries. Their biggest issue is they're not a great offensive team, but they're a good defensively, really good defensive team. Hawks beat them right before the break, the game before the last of the break. Again, Hawks at home this time. They'll be favorited against Orlando. You win that game. That's big just for season series purposes. You go up 2-0 on the season series. That's big. That's big for them. They're a team ahead of you in the standings. So obviously a game you get to fully catch up on them. And, it gets a great start just to go back or to start back from the All-Star break as well, just to get the team on the right track, get some momentum going in the right direction. I guess Orlando is a tough team because of their size. Again, we'll see how Clint does against a team like that. But at the same time, a team that, again, the Hawks, if they're able to be on their P's and Q's defensively, this is not a team, even with Paolo and with Franz, scoring, that you're like overly worried about, they have multiple guys who can put the ball in the basket. Jalen Suggs was ruled out of the game, so he would not be playing against the Hawks on Thursday. So obviously that's a big game that the Hawks have to get ready for. And, obviously you're looking to try to get that on the right track as you're also on the road to try to get back to 500. You're 3 games below 500 right now, but working your way back. And like I said, this is something where the Hawks, I don't think they're going to get it in one fell swoop maybe, but I think this is something they're going to chip into and continue to work. And you'll see it as they have one of the easier schedules to end the season left. And they also have a good amount of home games, including a 6-game homestand during this next month and a half of the season. So the Hawks will be in Atlanta a lot. So obviously it's important for the fans to come out to the games, support the team, as they continue to make this playoff push. We've seen some crazy games at State Farm Arena already this year. And so I expect that to continue moving forward. But I also expect the Hawks to understand the seriousness of the situation, because if that's the mindset around the team, as he mentioned, you brought in 2 guys from Cleveland. They were the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They've been in a winning locker room all year long. Terrence Mann has been on a team in the Clippers who, even through some of the changes, has been a winning team this year. So you're bringing in guys who knows how to win games, been in winning environments, and you're hoping to combine that with the young guys on the Hawks and try to get that to mesh together and create more of a winning locker room and a winning atmosphere with the Atlanta Hawks and with Quinn Snyder. So obviously Orlando is the first step in that process if you can win that game. Then you play Detroit. Obviously, to me, I think out of the 4-game stretch coming up, that is the biggest game, because that is the team in the 6th spot, and they are a couple of games above 500. And so you need to try to – I feel like Detroit's the team you're going to be chasing to get there. And this is also a huge game because the Hawks are down 2-1 in the season series. Hawks have to win this game to get it 2-2. And then now you can go into tiebreaker scenarios about what could get the Hawks over or what Detroit could do to get themselves the tiebreaker. If you obviously look at the season series, Hawks first game trailed a lot, came back in the 4th quarter, took the lead on one of the last possessions of the game, Cade Cunningham hit a game-winning shot to get them to win. Comeback second game, Hawks just couldn't hit any threes. They were going through that slump where they could not make any threes. Lost that game, came back. Trae Young at the Palace, hitting a big shot, game-winning shot, obviously, to beat Detroit, get the Hawks that win. Now you need this one. Obviously, this team is probably the best team you're going to play out of the 4 teams just because they're a team that has made a commitment defensively. But at the same time, Cade is a star in this league. Guys like Malik Beasley and Tobias Harris have been great veterans for that team. So the Hawks have to be ready to go out there and obviously know what type of game they're getting into. It's going to be a physical, grinded out type of a game. So, the Hawks, if they win that game, that's obviously going to be huge. You start out of the All-Star break 2-0 as well. So you obviously want to start with some momentum when you get into the season, right? Then you play the Miami Heat in a back-to-back. It's not a back-to-back, but back-to-back games. You play one in Atlanta, then you go to Miami, I believe. Or I think you might go to Miami first, then go to Atlanta. But obviously, the Heat have been a team that's been on the same side. They won the first game. There's no Jimmy Butler. Andrew Wiggins is now the guy you have to compete with. Obviously, the Heat are not what they've been in previous years. So that could be for the better, clearly, for this team. But obviously, at the end of the day, you still have to go out there and beat those guys. You know what Heat culture is all about. You know what they're capable of. They can win any given game. They're going to be tough defensively. Eric Spoelstra is still one of the best coaches in the game. So, and Tyler Hero is one of the best scorers in the game. So the Hawks have to be ready for that as well. Obviously, in my thought process, I'm thinking you got to at least split that. So they actually go to the Heat. Hold up. I was looking at the wrong schedule. So, yeah, they play the Heat at home, then go to the Heat before coming back home for Oklahoma City. But obviously, you want to win both games. That would be ideal. But at the least, you want to split. So go 3-1 coming out of that, go into the Thunder game, team you kind of hung with injuries till the third, fourth quarter, see where you are kind of against those guys. And then, you just kind of continue to grind for the most part because you have some other big matchups after that. If I go past the Thunder, Memphis, Bucks, back-to-back Pacers, Sixers, Hornets, Clippers. And then when you get past that, your schedule kind of lightens up a little bit. So, like I said, the Hawks have opportunities here. It's just they're going to have to really play some of their best basketball to do it. And I think that obviously starts with Trae Young. I think, Trae Young has given us some great moments this year. We obviously know he's had some of a bit of a turnover issue, but he's also a guy who can get you high assists and can have big games. Trae Young, if you're Quinn, if I'm Quinn, I'm asking Trae, hey, we're going to need a little bit more from you offensively. We're getting into that point in the season where, as you ramp up towards the postseason, teams are fighting for their lives to just get seeding or trying to get into the postseason. So teams are going to start to, the game plans are going to change a little bit. You're going to every game's going to start to be taken a little bit more seriously. And so you're going to kind of try to put out the best, game plans you can to try to get past each team on any given night. So you can go ahead and then, win games and get into the postseason. Like I said, the Hawks have some work to do. But, they're a team that, one thing about this team you've noticed this year, they don't give up. They don't back down. They'll fight. And I think that's something they've been trying to establish in Atlanta. And that culture is the fight, the will, and just keep competing. Just keep competing. You never know what will happen. That's what helped them come back down 21 against Chicago and have a 50-point fourth quarter. That's what's had them help them come back against the Knicks and almost pull that one out. And so knowing that you have that, this team's going to play hard. Now it's just about execution and guys stepping up. Dyson Daniels has been a big part of that. He's had a very strong last 5-6 games. People are still arguing about Dyson Daniels and his value to this team and how good he is. One person. And, I think everybody understands how important Dyson has been to this team and what they're trying to get from him moving forward. And I think that if Dyson Daniels, obviously, first things first, is just stays healthy, that's a great first step in the process. But at the same time, Dyson continues to give out the offensive output he's been giving. That's clearly big whenever he can help with the offensive load with Trey. And then obviously we know what he does. Steals the ball, blocks shots, just impacts the game in different ways. And so, him continuing to grind that out, continuing to be a disruptive player and trying to, help this team and the backcourt overall get, like I said, get where they are. So, the Hawks right now have their backcourt, set to go. Obviously, Dyson's been in the postseason before. Obviously, not in the role he's in now, but a good experience, I think, for him indeed. Riche, he's a guy who, we know he's on a bit of a minute restriction. I know a lot of people have complained about it. A lot of people have been frustrated about it, wanting him to play more. We'll see if postseason time comes around, that changes. But, Riche, he's played really well in these last few games. Riche's had a very underrated season. I think sometimes we've seen sometimes how bad the shooting can be and other things. But I think you've seen progression in his game. You've seen confidence increase in his game. And we've seen the defensive ability that he has. So I think Riche is a guy who could be very key for them down the stretch, because really what you're seeing is if he's giving you 11, 12, 13 points in the 20, 21 minutes of play he's giving you, think about when that time expands to 30, 33 minutes, what he may be giving you on a nightly basis. That could be 18, 19 points potentially. And he's become more aggressive with the ball. And I think that it's part of, like I said, the plan for him. I think everybody has a plan in place, and I think they're not going to rush it. And Riche is one of those guys they're not going to rush. So he's going to be very important to them down the stretch, obviously with the wing depth and just, being able to, potentially, like I said, play in those four quarters, have good performances, and allow Quinn to trust them in those moments. The 4 spot has been Gay before the break. Niang started 1. Now, Niang obviously is the better offensive player, better overall player in terms of just veteran guy, knows how to play the game and shoots the ball well. Gay brings you more defensive in size. The big thing for Mohamed Gay, if he is still going to be the starter going into tomorrow and then the next further games, is just his offense. If he can give them something offensively, that's huge. He's kind of one of those players where if Gay can give you something, especially because he's going to get the outside look, he's going to get the outside 3. Teams are giving him that. If he can hit that shot, that will go a long way for this team, because then it allows Quinn to play him more. Because what happens is, like, right now, you're going to probably trust Niang, even with the defensive liability, because good passer, can hit threes. He's a guy you can trust. You have a belief, like, I know Niang can perform in this situation. Gay is someone you don't know can perform in that situation and hasn't had enough experience in that situation. So you're really hopeful that, he can kind of continue his growth as the season goes on, because it seems like he will be on this roster in the rotation. I think one thing you have to look at is clearly, the Hawks. The Hawks, he's under a full NBA contract, so they have full control of him. He'll be able to be on the postseason roster. And so I think the Hawks, with a lot of these moves that they've made, knowing that they can't bring the two-ways on, they're making sure that, hey, we're putting guys like Gay in position where if we need him, he can go. And they still have a roster spot available, if I believe. So you never know if one of those spots can be converted. Maybe they could be saving that spot for the postseason. Like, all right, let's see where we are. Do we want to convert a Keaton Wallace? That would probably be my vote. Do we want to promote a Barlow? And kind of see where you are with the roster. Because, if you're looking at it from a front court perspective, all you have of Nance out for the year is Okongwu, Clint, Gay as, like, I guess your bigs, realistically. You only have 3 guys, right? So there could be value in giving convert Barlow to help him, in case you have an injury to one of those guys, Barlow can come in and step in. Or you have Keaton, where Trey, Mann, Dyson, are kind of your guys. When Krejci comes back, I think that kind of it lessens Keaton's importance because of the fact that, okay, if you go into the postseason with those 4 guys, you're like, even if one of them goes down, you're like, okay, we can play with 3. We can play with Trey, Dyson, Man. So I think that what it creates is that if the Hawks are planning to potentially convert one of the two-way contracts to a full NBA contract for postseason play, right now I'm leaning Barlow because you just don't have as many bigs. But it depends. We don't know what they want to do, so we'll have to see when they get there. And they could shock us and not do anything. You never know, right? But those are just a few players that obviously are important. And obviously the 3 Trey guys, they know why they're here: to help win, to help compete, to help in a way show them, the young players, how to win. And you've seen winning basketball from these guys so far with the Hawks. So they know why they're here. They know their influence. They know their impact. And so, the Hawks feel like they have a good enough roster to kind of push forward and be able to really, compete for a playoff spot and feel, I'll say, feel good about competing for that playoff spot and think they can, see if they can get to the 6th spot. So I think that'd be very big for this team moving forward. And like I mentioned, playoff push begins now, and they understand where they are and they know what they got to do. Kongu, all of them, they know what they got to do, man. And listen, if this ends up going well for them, I mean, you hit the 6th seed with the injury issues you had and some of the wildness of the season. I think that will quiet down some Trey Young rumors and discussion about if he's going to walk. Because to me, he still seems like a man who isn't thinking about leaving Atlanta. That's just me. That's just my opinion. But I've also came on this podcast and told you how the season ends will impact his decision. So we'll have to see what happens with this team as they continue to move forward and they get ready to start playing basketball again. Obviously, this past weekend, the Hawks had 2 guys represent them in All-Star Weekend, Zachary Richer and Trey Young. Both had some good showings. Trey's team made it to the finals of the NBA All-Star format, which I know people are not a big fan of. Or you've heard some players kind of be like, I like the game play, but there's too many breaks. There's not enough basketball, which a lot of people complain about. We're watching a 3-hour broadcast and watching like 30 minutes of basketball. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, I think one of the formats that I saw suggested, if they're going to change it, is you're hearing the NBA might introduce a $1 million award. Clearly, money has worked with the NBA Cup, where teams obviously are busting their ass to play in the NBA Cup and ball and compete. But, will that work in the All-Star game? I think one person who made a great point is Damian Lillard. He mentioned that he feels like it's too late in the year where we're so close to the postseason, guys are trying to save their bodies. So he voted, or he not voted, but he said he would like to see it moved up. Obviously, the issue is you don't want to compete with the NFL during the postseason because obviously the postseason will dominate NBA ratings. I've made mention that if I'm the NBA, I would move it up a little bit. And I put it during that week between the Super Bowl and the NFC AFC Championship games because all you really have is that Pro Bowl game that nobody wants to watch really in the NFL. So I'd rather take my chances because if you're watching the current version of the NFL Pro Bowl, you're just a sicko. So it's not like you're losing that casual fan to that realistically. And it's a couple of weeks sooner than what you have had it. So that may be more beneficial for teams. That puts you closer to the middle point of the season than past the middle point of the season. So I think that's something you could look into for sure. I think going back to an East-West format would be smart. I just think that, there's certain things in the game that you don't want to change too much. And I think going back to that would be good. Adding some type of prize. Lillard suggested home court advantage. I just feel like teams won't like it because now it's like it's important to be the number one seed for your home court advantage through your side of the postseason in terms of your conference, but it won't matter in terms of the finals. Like imagine if like somehow a team that was an 8th seed, made it to the finals, but their side of the conference won in the All-Star game, and then they played the number one seed of the other conference. That number one seed is going to be like, we really aren't going to be awarded 4 home games just because of a game that maybe one or two of our players were involved in, getting the other side that home court advantage. So it's something that I think could be smart. It's something I think doesn't Major League Baseball, or I think they still do it, where they would be like, if whoever wins gets home field in the World Series. I don't know if that's still the case now, but I think that's something they could definitely look into. I think there's definitely different things you can do with the format. I think the NBA really, you could tell this past All-Star weekend, tried different things to try to just, they're going through this experimental phase, trying to get it more competitive. And so they're trying all these different things, and some of it just doesn't land and some of it does. And I think you reevaluate. And I think, again, I think you should take players' feedback and think, okay, should we look into something like that? Because obviously you telling me that home court's on the line, NBA players are going to go out there and compete because they're like, listen, if you would assume a lot of those team players who are out there think they're going to be competing for a championship, and they're going to be like, listen, I'm trying to get home court if we get there. So you're going to get more competitiveness out of them. So there's some things, so some small thoughts I had on it. Obviously, Trae Young viral video, man playing and1 basketball out there. Trae Young leading the entire game, All-Star game, high assists. Trae Young doing his thing, man. Representing the city, repping Atlanta. And then obviously Ricochet, like I mentioned, skills challenge. Team Rooks was eliminated early, but in his group in the skills challenge or against other guys were eliminated. But he's a guy who, great experience for him just to be able to represent this team. So really, really happy for the both of those guys. And now they're getting focused, like I said, on the playoff push ahead. And we'll see what happens with the Hawks moving forward. Obviously, I'm believing Hawks will keep you covered. I'll stay up to date with all the Hawks, see what happens on their path to the postseason. We'll see where they end up when things are all said and done. But I think that's about it for Bleav in Hawks. I appreciate you guys tuning in for another episode. If you enjoyed the episode, subscribe to the channel, like the video. All the listeners do the same thing. Subscribe, leave a comment, leave a rating, leave a review. All feedback is appreciated from you for sure. Follow me on Twitter, Brycey_2K, BRICEY_2K. If you want to follow me for all my Hawks takes, live tweets during the games, and analysis as well. So I appreciate you guys tuning in for another Bleav in Hawks episode. It's your boy, Bryce Lewis. We'll see you next time.